Any discussion on the bill as amended? This is Bill 1327 before council.
My problem with, there's good and there's bad in the budget, and there have been years where I've had a lot to say about it and then not being able to support it. The changes that we made, some of the things that had to go up, I don't disagree with. Things with public safety, we need to do these things to support Talbot County having the best public safety in the state. The problem is we don't have a way to pay for it yet. And being that we're $2 million in the hole, I came into the budget process thinking, okay, I can support the budget as long as it doesn't go up out of the piggy bank. So I had in my head, okay, as long as we stay at $2 million, it gives us a little leeway to figure out over the course of the next year how can we pay for things that we need to do. For me, to go up in the budget without a way to pay for it is too much for me to be able to support. But I don't want anybody to think that the priorities that this council has set, I do agree with, but we haven't figured out how we're going to pay for it yet. I also think that we took last year's budget and we didn't work on it. I don't know if there was anything of any substance or at all where we said, at the beginning of when I was on the council, we went through department by department. Now I know we were slightly different budgetary times then. We had lost millions and millions and millions of dollars, and we had to cut everywhere. I mean, we even had to cut the schools one year. And we spent a lot more time really discussing each department and where we could cut and where we couldn't. I feel like the last 2 years we've done less and less of that. And while I don't think we could have found $2 million to cut, I recognize that, I feel like we didn't make enough of an effort to even try to shave a couple $100,000 off of it. And maybe at the end of the day, with the things that needed to go up, we could have found some wiggle room to make some cuts someplace else so that we could have kind of stayed where we were, so that it would have given us this next year to figure out what we were going to do, to go to the citizens and say, okay, look, public safety has been something that we need to prioritize. The employees, we don't want them leaving, going other places. We do want to keep them here, and we are doing some incentive things, and I agree with them. But again, we didn't have a way to pay for it yet. On the education piece of it, the law that went into effect several years ago with the maintenance of effort, when you're in a tax-capped county, you can't raise the property tax except to pay for education. And we didn't do anything with that except for the one year to make back up for the cut we had made about 4 years ago, and we hadn't tested that. And I do remember last year's public hearing when people said, you know what, raise property taxes to pay for it. And I don't think anybody on this council was willing to make cuts on the county half of the budget in order to raise the education piece of it. We weren't willing to make those cuts. And so now the citizens are going to see that as the schools ask for, need, want, whatever, more money to pay for education, it's going to have to come from the property tax increases. So you're going to see that for the first time this year. If the escalator kicks in, that's going to be the mechanism to pay for it. So while the council won't necessarily blanketly approve every penny that the schools ask for, we are definitely giving more leeway with that. And so if you agree with that, that's great. If you think the property taxes are going to start going up too much, then you need to speak to your Board of Education. But we need to trust in their decisions, and the only way to pay for those decisions is through the property tax increase. So I very much wavering on the budget, and in general I agree with most of where the spending is going, but I just would have liked to have seen a little more effort into trying to find some places to reorganize and try to make some cuts. I know certain things have to go up, but sometimes there can be something that gives. So didn't have anything written out this year. I just in general can't go up out of the piggy bank, and I would like very much to see, right now, the only way you can raise property taxes is for education. I would very much like to see something on the ballot in November that if you agree with the increases that are in this budget and you think that it has to go up, I would like the citizens' permission. I know they elected us to do so, but I also don't think that 2 years ago they were thinking about their taxes going up when they elected the group of 5. I would very much like to have their input if there's any way that we can get something on the ballot to see whether or not you have some other carve-outs on the property tax to do something with the property tax cap to pay for some of the things in the county side of the budget. So just put that out there for just some discussion over the summer to see what the people have to say, because otherwise the taxes are going to have to continue to go up. And if they have to, property tax I think is the more fair way, the more equalizing thing, as opposed to income tax, which really hits our people I think a lot harder. Just to remind, our median household income is about 17% below the state average. We also have a lot of our citizens who are either retired and don't pay taxes, or they live 6 months in a day someplace else. So when you raise income tax, which we're not doing this year, it hits our working people more so than the citizens as a whole, which is why I think the property tax may need to be looked at, but we need to hear from the people. So I hope that you will give us that feedback or figure out a way to get a ballot initiative. Thanks.
I'd just like to speak a moment to that real property tax cap, because I was totally unaware when I joined the council, and maybe I should have known, but I didn't, that it's really not a tax cap in the sense of being a rate cap. It's a revenue cap. And our revenue, we are limited in how many dollars we can derive from real property taxes. There's an assumption, and I always had it, I admit it, is that as new development came to the county and thus the assessed value of property in the county increased, clearly the property tax revenue to the county should increase accordingly. It actually works the opposite. The higher the assessed value of properties in the county, the lower the tax rate has to be, because the total revenue that can be generated is what is capped. And as long as we stay in that position, we're sitting now with a revenue cap that has essentially been in place for many, many years, while the cost of doing business has gone up and up and up and up. Almost 70% of the expenses the county incurs are mandated to us, and those expenses continue to grow. So we have very little discretionary income, if you will, and our discretionary expenses, where our income is so set, it can't grow, it really prevents us from doing many, many things that I think all of us believe are good things and things we would like to see. I mean, unfortunately, we just can't do them because we don't have the ability to have the income brought in. And so that's where I think Ms. Price has spoken to looking at perhaps trying to do something on the ballot to address that issue. And I think it is something that everyone in the county is going to need to really take a good hard look at, because to me it's unreasonable to expect the county to try to operate on a revenue stream that is totally capped, whereas expenses across the board, and I know everyone out there sees it in their own households, continue to go up. So I think hopefully everyone will be thinking about that. We're going to be talking a lot about it, and look forward to perhaps getting some resolution to this come November. Thank you.
I think that a lot of what's been said about the property tax cap is basically our reality up here. And with incomes somewhat stagnant, we're not getting increases in income tax revenue either. But I think it's the will of the voter to have a property tax cap, and until the voter decides that's not the case, then we're left with that reality. In raising the property tax cap in order to do the educational supplement. I think this is the only way we're going to be able to keep up with the requests of the school board over the years, and especially if this escalator kicks in. We were fortunate for some reason, I guess just because the property values have taken such a hit here, not to be on the escalator, and I hope we stay off the escalator because that's big money when that kicks in. But the reality is that we have to find revenue somewhere. We cannot cut county government, the other half of county government. I'm speaking of the half that is not the school board. We cannot cut that half of county government, which includes all the public safety things that we do, and roads and other essential things, to pay for the increases in school funding. So the voter may not like the fact that we have an educational supplement, but that's the only relief valve we have, basically, without cutting essential services. So I'm not as down in the dumps as Mrs. Price is on this budget. We've spent more than we've taken in lots of times in the past that I've been on the council. Not in a cavalier way, but in order to address needs that we have, and you can't ignore them, public safety being the most important, obviously. And things have turned around. Revenues do come back at times, and it's not all as bad. We've put a lot of money away for our OPEB obligation over the years. We have a rainy day fund, and I still think we manage the county effectively and in fairness to keeping the tax burdens as low as we can on the citizens of the county, because that is a cost of living that has driven people out of places plenty of times. It's the tax burden that drives people out of their homes. They can't afford the tax burden in some of these other jurisdictions. So I'm proud of Talbot County, but we do always walk a very tight rope when it comes time to request for funding and paring it down to what we can afford. That's just the reality. And the voter has imposed that on this council, and if you don't like it, you just have to advocate for some other way, which sounds like you may do. But the voter tells us what we need to do as an elected body, and we have to do it.
I was just looking over some numbers. In 2009, the county council's budget was $79,150,000 and some change. The budget this year we're proposing is $79,350,000. So just about a $200,000 increase from 2009 in our budget. But expenses go up every day, not just on the school side of it, but as we talk about the public safety side of it, the cost of the equipment that Mr. Stamp and his department needs, those equipment prices go up every year. We met, myself and Mr. Hollis met with Ms. Jean Weissman from the town of St. Michael's and former town councilwoman Ms. Joanne Clark last week, and they were sharing with us their concerns over their volunteer fire department in the town of St. Michael's and how that department is going to look in the next year or 2 or 5 down the road, because the cost of that particular department is also going up. This council funds almost $2 million in this budget, $1.8 million towards our volunteer fire department. That number has gone up over $500,000 from 2009. So that department alone has exceeded $500,000 to what our budget was in 2009, about $300,000. So let's just go to show you that the cost of doing business, of keeping you safe, it costs money. And Ms. Price is certainly correct. We can't continue going into our general fund balance to offset the budget. We've done it this year, we've done it in past years, but of course this can't be a continued practice. I'm sure Ms. Lane would tell us we can't continue down this road. So we have to turn to other sources of revenue, and I feel that the property tax, and Ms. Williams explained it briefly, needs to be adjusted. If not eliminated, it needs to be adjusted. 2%, in my opinion, is too low. whether the taxpayer pushes it up to 5% or 3.5%, but at 2%, it's just too low of a revenue generator for us to continue doing the business that we need to do in the county. And I said it at the last public meeting we had on the budget at the auditorium at the school. Those persons who were in that room, the ball is squarely in the voters' court. It's not in our court, the ball is in your court, because you want good schools for your citizens to go to. You want us to provide bus transportation from St. Peter and Paul's to the middle school to get your kids back and forth. We just don't have it in this budget. We don't have it in this budget to do that, and we've been hearing parents and citizens who want this county to provide bus service to some of our private school students. We would love to do it, but we can't. So, and these are the choices we have to make now. Do we want to start closing down EMS services in part of the county? God forbid, no, we don't. But the cost of doing that business increases every single day. So this is the harsh reality of it. This was probably one of the more expedient budgetary deliberations that I've sat in over the last 8 years now. I don't know whether Mr. Bartlett will become an old pros at it or what, but it was not as stressful as a time going through this budget as we have gone through in the past. We saw the need. We saw the need as being a real need. The education supplement, I am in favor of it. I think we need to do all we can for our school students and for our school staff. So that supplement hopefully will allow them to do some additional things in our school system. So.
When you're comparing budgets, you actually have to go to the subtotal of the operating and not include transfers. So if you want to get a true comparison, I'm going to take it apart a little bit. That 2009 included a transfer of $7.5 million to capital. That wasn't a day-to-day operating expense. So if you really want to compare 09 with this year, it was 70 million compared to 78 or wherever we are now.
79.
79. So I'm not saying things don't go up, but it wasn't a $200,000 difference because you really have to back out that $7.5 million transfer to capital. So it was a $70 million budget compared to 79.
I mean, it's just the cost of doing business. So, I mean, whether I mean, if we had a $2 million transfer we used in this year to a $7 million that year, so we still transferred money. It went towards an operational cost in that time period, apples and oranges. But it's the same thing. The 79.1 in 2009 and 79.3 this year.
That's the only time we've ever done that in any budget year. Did we transfer that kind of money? In 14, there was a 1.8, which I don't know what that one was. It was a transfer.
I'm not.
But I just want
trying to eat the budget apart bit by bit.
Yeah, I'm not saying things don't need to go up, but I do want, if you where you really want to look to compare where we're spending money, it's the subtotal of the operating, and you take out the transfers and things like that.
Well, you can't take out the. I don't want to debate this. You can't take out the transfer because there's still cost to the county.
Right, but capital is a different set of expenses than our operating data.
True, but there's still cost to the county. I mean, you can't pretend like they're not there. There's still a cost to the county. They're still part of our total budget. There's still a cost of doing the business. So some years they're expensive and some years they're not. And that's true. But they are a part of our total budget. So with that being said, again, Ms. Lane, I just want to thank you and your staff for your due diligence in getting this all together for us, and once again doing a yeoman's job getting us through this. I want to thank my council members for all of their hard work in piecing this together bit by bit as we went through our deliberations. Although sometimes we may differ, I think we do so with respect for one another and allowing each other to voice our difference of opinion. Anything further from you, Ms. Lane? Okay. And with that matter being said, Bill 1327. Mr. Fuller, Ms. Hollis, wish to be heard?
No, sir. Just sitting on the edge of my seat.
Okay. I thought you wanted to change hats. But Bill 1327 is now before the council for vote. This is a bill to enact the 2016-2017 annual budget and appropriation of $79,350,000. Madam Secretary, please call your roll.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Ms. Williams? Mr. Bartlett?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
No.
Mr. Callahan?
You have your budget. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you guys very much. Thank you.